Marcus wiped the sweat from his brow with the back of his hand, the damp rag in his grip leaving a faint streak of grime across his forehead. The mop handle felt heavy tonight, heavier than usual, as he pushed it across the polished hardwood of the community center's basketball court. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead, casting long shadows that danced with every swipe of the mop. It was late past midnight and the club was supposed to be empty. But the laughter and jeering voices echoing from the far end of the gym told him otherwise. He'd seen the group when he started his shift, a cluster of young guys college age, maybe a year or two older than his daughter, Lena. They were loud, tossing a basketball back and forth, their sneakers squeaking against the floor he'd just cleaned an hour ago. Marcus didn't mind the noise too much. It was better than the silence that usually filled his nights. Silence gave him too much time to think about Lena's hospital bills, the second job he was barely holding on to, the way his ex-wife's absence still stung like a fresh cut even after 3 years. But tonight, the noise was grating, their voices sharp with a kind of careless arrogance that set his teeth on edge. "Yo, janitor man," one of them called out, his voice dripping with mockery. Marcus didn't look up. He kept mopping, the rhythm steady, his calloused hands moving with practiced ease. He'd heard worse than janitor man in his 15 years cleaning this place. He'd been called everything from custodian to words he wouldn't repeat in front of Lena. He was 42, with a bad knee and a worse back. But he'd learned long ago to let the insult slide. They didn't pay his bills, and they didn't get him home to his daughter any faster. "Hey, I'm talking to you." The same voice rang out again, louder this time. Marcus sighed, resting the mop against the wall. He straightened up, his broad shoulders stiff from hours of work, and turned to face them. There were 5 of them, sprawled across the bleachers like they owned the place. The one who'd spoken, a tall, lanky, with a red snapback tilted sideways, held the basketball under one arm, grinning like he just told the funniest joke in the world. The others snickered, their eyes glinting with the kind of mischief that only comes from too much confidence and too little sense. "What's up?" Marcus asked, his voice low, steady. He wasn't looking for trouble. He just wanted to finish his shift and get home to Lena, who'd be waiting for him with her math homework spread across the kitchen table, pretending she wasn't tired. "Yo, you ever play ball?" Snapback asked, tossing the basketball from one hand to the other. The others laughed again, like it was the most ridiculous thing they'd ever heard. Marcus caught the way they looked at him, his faded gray uniform, the worn-out sneakers, the lines etched deep into his face. He knew what they saw, a tired, middle-aged janitor who probably couldn't run 10 feet without wheezing. They weren't entirely wrong about the wheezing part. "Little bit," Marcus said, keeping his tone neutral. He'd played, sure, back in high school, before life got complicated. Before Lena's mom left, before the medical debts started piling up, before he'd traded dreams for a mop and a paycheck. He'd been good not great, but good enough to start on his varsity team. Good enough to sink shots from the corner when the game was on the line. But that was a lifetime ago, and these kids didn't need to know any of it. "Little bit," Snapback echoed, his grin widening. "Come on, man, show us what you got." "Take a shot." He held a ball out, not tossing it, just dangling it like bait. The others hooted, egging him on, their voices overlapping in a chorus of taunts. "Nah, I'm good," Marcus said, turning back to his mop. He wasn't here to entertain them. He had another hour of cleaning before he could clock out, and Lena needed him home. "Or, come on, don't be like that," another one called, shorter, with a shaved head and a gold chain that gleamed under the lights. "One shot, janitor man. Bet you can't even hit the rim." Marcus's jaw tightened. He could feel the weight of their stares, the way their laughter filled the gym like smoke. He thought of Lena, how she'd look at him with those big, serious eyes of hers and tell him to ignore the dumb boys who thought they were better than everyone else. She was 16, smarter than he'd ever been, and she deserved better than a father who let himself get baited by a bunch of punks. But something in their tone, the way they assumed he was nothing, less than nothing. A pricked at a part of him he'd buried years ago. He set the mop down, slow and deliberate, and walked toward them. The laughter died down a little, replaced by curious smirks. Snapback tossed him the ball, harder than necessary, but Marcus caught it cleanly, his hands wrapping around the leather like it was an old friend. The weight of it felt familiar, grounding, like a piece of himself he'd forgotten existed. "One shot," Marcus said, his voice calm but firm. "Then I'm back to work." The group erupted in cheers, half mocking, half excited, like they were about to watch a circus act. Snapback pointed to the free throw line. "Right there, old man. Let's see it." Marcus walked to the line, the ball tucked under one arm. The gym was quiet now, except for the faint hum of the lights and the occasional snicker from the bleachers. He could feel their eyes on him, waiting for him to miss, to prove their assumptions right. He glanced at the hoop, its red rim gleaming under the lights, the net swaying slightly from an earlier game. 15 feet. He'd made this shot 1,000 times in his youth, back when his knees didn't ache and his dreams were bigger than a paycheck. He bounced the ball once, twice, the sound sharp against the polished floor. His hands moved on instinct, finding the seams, his fingers settling into a rhythm he hadn't felt in years. The kids were still chuckling, but it was distant now, like static on a radio he tuned out. He took a deep breath, his eyes narrowing on the hoop, and then he moved. His knees bent, his body coiled, and he pushed off the floor, the ball rolling off his fingertips in a smooth arc. The gym seemed to hold its breath as the ball sailed through the air, spinning cleanly, its path unwavering. It hit the backboard with a soft tap, just above the rim, and dropped through the net with a whisper of nylon. A perfect swish. The silence that followed was deafening. The ball bounced once, twice, then rolled to a stop near the baseline. Marcus didn't move, didn't smile, just stood there, his hands loose at his sides. The kids stared, their smirks gone, their eyes wide with something that looked like shock, maybe even respect. Snapback was the first to break the silence, letting out a low whistle. "Damn, janitor man," he said, shaking his head. "You got some game." Marcus shrugged, already turning back to his mop. "Told you I played a little." He didn't wait for their response, didn't need their approval. He'd made his point, and he had a floor to finish. But as he pushed the mop across the court, he heard them whispering, their voices quieter now, less cocky. He caught fragments. "Did you see that?" And man, he didn't even look fazed. For the first time that night, Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Not because he'd shown them up, but because he could already hear Lena's voice when he told her about it, her laughter filling their tiny apartment, her pride in him warming the cold corners of his heart. He finished his shift in silence, the kids leaving not long after, their bravado muted. As he locked up the gym and stepped into the cool night air, he felt lighter than he had in months. The stars were out, faint against the city's glow, and for a moment, he let himself believe things might get better for him, for Lena, for the life they were scraping together. One shot at a time. The next night, Marcus was back at the community center, same mop, same routine. The gym was empty this time, the silence almost too heavy after the previous night's chaos. He worked methodically, the squeak of his sneakers against the floor the only sound. Lena had laughed so hard when he told her about the shot, her eyes bright with pride. "You showed Dad," she'd said, punching his arm lightly. "Bet they won't mess with you again." He'd grinned, but he didn't tell her how much her words meant, how they carried him through the long hours of his shift. He was halfway through mopping when the door creaked open. Marcus tensed, expecting another group of kids looking for trouble. Instead, it was Snapback alone this time, no posse, no attitude. He held the same basketball from the night before, spinning it nervously between his hands. "Hey, janitor man," the kid said, his voice lacking the edge it had before. "Marcus, right?" Marcus nodded, leaning on the mop. "Yeah? What's up?" The kid hesitated, glancing at the hoop. "That shot last night, a broken bar that was clean, like real clean. You play for real back in the day? Marcus shrugged. High school. Nothing major. Snapback nodded, like he was piecing something together. Look, I was wondering, a broken bar, could you, like, show me how you did that? The way you shot, it was a broken bar, different, smooth. I've been trying to get my free throws consistent, but I keep bricking. Marcus raised an eyebrow. He hadn't expected this. The kid looked sincere, almost embarrassed, his usual swagger replaced by something softer, like he was asking for more than just a shooting tip. Marcus set the mop aside and walked over, taking the ball when Snapback offered it. It's about rhythm, Marcus said, bouncing the ball lightly. You gotta feel it in your hands, your feet, your whole body. Like you're part of the shot, not just throwing it. He demonstrated, slow and deliberate, showing the kid how to square his shoulders, how to let the ball roll off his fingers with just the right spin. Snapback watched, his eyes focused, soaking it in. They spent the next hour on the court, Marcus coaching him through the motion, correcting his stance, his grip. The kid was a quick learner, his shots starting to find the net more often than not. By the time they finished, the gym felt different, warmer, like it held a piece of something real. Snapback held out his hand, and Marcus shook it, the kid's grip firm, respectful. Thanks, Marcus, he said. For real? Marcus nodded. Anytime. Marcus pushed the mop across the community center's gym floor, the familiar squeak of his sneakers blending with the faint hum of the overhead lights. It was another late night, the kind where the world outside felt far away, and all that existed was the rhythm of his work. The previous night's events lingered in his mind, and not just the perfect free throw that had stunned the group of cocky college kids, but the way it felt to hold the ball again, to hear the net snap as it swished through. He hadn't expected it to mean so much, not to him, not to Lena, his daughter, who'd beamed with pride when he told her the story over breakfast. But now, as he worked alone in the quiet gym, he figured it was a one-time thing, a fluke moment that wouldn't come again. The door creaked open, shattering the silence. Marcus glanced up, expecting a straggler or maybe a maintenance issue he'd have to log. Instead, it was the kid from last night, the one in the red snapback, the ringleader of the group who taunted him. Tonight, he was alone, no posse trailing behind, no smirk twisting his face. He held the same worn basketball, spinning it nervously between his palms. Marcus straightened, resting the mop against the wall, his bad knee protesting faintly. Hey, you a broken bar, Marcus, right? The kid said, his voice softer than before, almost hesitant. Marcus nodded, wiping his hands on his gray uniform. Yeah? What's up? The kid Malik, he said. His name was shifted his weight, glancing at the hoop like it held the answer to whatever he was wrestling with. That shot you made last night, a broken bar, that was crazy. Like, pro-level clean. You said you played in high school. Beaut, a broken bar, you got more than that, don't you? His eyes searched Marcus's face, curious, maybe a little awed. Marcus shrugged, keeping his expression neutral. Just high school. Varsity starter, but nothing special. Long time ago. He didn't mention the scholarship offers he turned down when Lena's mom got pregnant, or the way his dreams of college ball had dissolved into late-night shifts and hospital bills. That was his story, not Malik's business. Malik nodded, but he didn't look convinced. Look, man, I was wondering, a broken bar, could you show me how you did it? That free throw. My shot's all over the place here, bricks half the time, air balls the other half. Coach says I gotta get consistent if I wanna start this season. He paused, his fingers tightening around the ball. I know you're working, Beaut, a broken bar, I'd appreciate it. Marcus studied him. The kid's bravado was gone, replaced by something raw, almost vulnerable. He remembered that feeling of wanting to be better, knowing the court was the one place where you could prove it. He thought of Lena, how she'd tell him to help, to be the kind of man she looked up to. All right, Marcus said, setting the mop aside. One condition: you help me finish cleaning after. Malik grinned, a flicker of his old swagger returning. Deal. They started at the free throw line. Marcus took the ball, feeling its familiar weight, and showed Malik the basics. feet shoulder width apart, knees bent just enough to stay loose, eyes on the front of the rim. "It's not just your hands," Marcus said, demonstrating the motion, his body moving with a fluidity he hadn't tapped in years. "Your whole body's got to be in sync. Shoulders square, follow through clean, like you're reaching for something just out of reach." Malik watched, mimicking the stance, his movements stiff at first. Marcus corrected him gently, nudging his elbow higher, adjusting his grip on the ball. "Feel the seams," he said. "Let the ball tell you when it's ready to go." Malik nodded, his focus intense, and took a shot. It hit the rim, bounced off, but it was closer than Marcus expected. "Not bad," he said. Again. They worked for nearly an hour, the gym filling with the rhythmic thump of the ball and the occasional swish of mid-shot. Malik was a quick learner, his form improving with every attempt. Marcus found himself slipping into an old role coach, mentor, the guy who could see the game a step ahead. He hadn't realized how much he missed it. The way teaching someone else brought the course back to life. By the time they stopped, Malik was hitting more shots than he missed, his face lit with a grin that wasn't cocky but proud. "Man, you're like a wizard or something," he said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Where do you learn to break it down like that?" Marcus chuckled, the sound low and warm. "Just years of watching and doing. You play enough, you figure out what works." He didn't tell Malik about the countless nights shooting hoops in his driveway after Lena went to bed, trying to quiet the noise in his head. Or how he'd sometimes sneak into the gym after hours, just to feel the ball in his hands, to remember who he used to be. Malik tossed him the ball. "Your turn. Let's see that shot again." Marcus hesitated. He wasn't here to show off, and he still had half the gym to clean. But Malik's eyes were bright, expectant, and something in Marcus stirred a spark of the kid he'd been, the one who lived for the sound of the net. "One shot," he said, stepping to the line. The gym was quiet again, the air heavy with anticipation. Marcus bounced the ball twice, the sound sharp and deliberate, and let his body take over. His knees bent, his shoulders squared, and he pushed off, the ball leaving his fingers in a perfect arc. It sailed through the air, hit the backboard softly, and dropped through the net with a clean swish. Malik let out a whoop, his voice echoing in the empty gym. "Man, you gotta teach me that spin," he said, shaking his head. "You sure you're just a janitor?" Marcus smiled, small and private. "Just a guy who knows the game." They finished the night cleaning together, Malik pushing a broom while Marcus mopped, the kid chattering about his team, his coach, the pressure of the upcoming season. Marcus listened, offering a nod or a word of advice when it felt right. By the time they locked up, the gym gleaming under the lights, Marcus felt something shift inside him. It wasn't just the basketball, it was the connection, the chance to be more than the guy with the mop. The next night, Malik was back, this time with two of his teammates, Issa Sean, the short one with the gold chain, and Andre, a lanky kid with a quiet demeanor. They didn't come with taunts or smirks, they came with questions. "Malik said you helped him with his shot," Sean said, almost shyly. "Think you could a broken bar, you know, show us too?" Marcus didn't expect it to become a routine, but it did. Night after night, the kids showed up after his shift started, sometimes just Malik, sometimes the whole crew. They'd shoot, talk, learn. Marcus taught them not just free throws but footwork, how to read a defender, how to stay calm when the game got tight. He shared stories from his high school days of games won, games lost, the time he sank a buzzer beater to beat their rival school. The kids soaked it up, their respect growing with every lesson. Word spread. Other players from the community college team started dropping by, then some high school kids who'd heard the rumors. The gym, once a place Marcus dreaded for its endless floors and echoing silence, became alive again. He'd work his shift, then spend an hour or two coaching, the mop forgotten in the corner. Lena noticed the change in him, the way he came home with a spark in his eyes. "You're like a coach now, Dad," she said one night, her voice teasing but proud. "Maybe you should get a whistle." He laughed it off. but the idea stuck. He wasn't just a janitor Anna Maria, not to the kids, not to himself. He was Marcus, the guy who could break down a jump shot, who could see the potential in a kid like Malik and help him find it. He started keeping a notebook, jotting down drills and plays, things he remembered from his own coaches and things he'd figured out on his own. The kids called him Coach M, and the name felt like a gift. One night, the gym was fuller than usual. The whole college team had shown up, along with a handful of younger kids from the neighborhood. Marcus had planned a scrimmage, nothing formal, just a way to let them practice what he'd taught them. He was in the middle of explaining a pick and roll when the door swung open. It was Coach Harris, the team's actual coach, a stocky man with a clipboard and a reputation for being tough but fair. Marcus froze, the ball in his hands, expecting a reprimand for using the gym after hours. Instead, Harris watched for a moment, his eyes scanning the group, the way they listened to Marcus, the way they moved with purpose. "You're the janitor, right?" he said finally, his voice gruff but not unkind. Marcus nodded, bracing himself. "Yes, sir." Harris stepped closer, his gaze sharp. "Heard about you. Kids say you've been teaching them. Saw Malik's free throws in practice last week. A night and day difference. You did that?" "Just helped him find his rhythm," Marcus said, keeping his tone even. Harris nodded, a slow smile breaking across his face. "You ever coached before?" "Not officially." "Well, you're doing a hell of a job unofficially." He paused, glancing at the players, who were watching the exchange like it was a game in overtime. "We're short an assistant coach this season. Budget's tight, but it's a paid gig. You interested?" Marcus blinked, the words sinking in slowly. "A coaching job. A chance to be more than the guy with the mop, to build something for Lena, for himself." He thought of his daughter, her faith in him, the way she'd smile if he told her. He thought of the kids in the gym, their trust, their potential. He thought of the ball in his hands, the way it still felt right. "I'd have to think about it," he said, but his voice carried a note of possibility. Harris nodded, handing him a card with his number. "Think fast. Season starts soon." The gym was silent as Harris left, the kids staring at Marcus like he just hit another impossible shot. Malik broke the tension, tossing him the ball. "Coach M, you gonna do it?" Marcus caught the ball, spinning it in his hands. He looked at the hoop, the net swaying faintly, and saw not just a basket but a future, a one where he could be more, do more, for Lena, for these kids, for himself. "Maybe," he said, a smile tugging at his lips. "Now get back to work. We've got a game to win." The kids cheered, the sound filling the gym, and Marcus felt it as a spark of something new, something bigger than a single shot. He wasn't just silencing the club anymore. He was building one. Marcus stood at the edge of the community center's gym, the basketball spinning slowly in his hands, its worn leather a familiar comfort against his calloused palms. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly, casting long shadows across the polished floor he'd just mopped. It was a week after Coach Harris's unexpected offer for a part-time assistant coaching gig for the community college team, and Marcus still hadn't given him an answer. The card with Harris's number sat heavy in his pocket, a reminder of a door he wasn't sure he was ready to walk through. He'd spent 15 years as the janitor, the guy who cleaned up after everyone else's games, and the idea of stepping onto the court as something more felt like a dream that belonged to someone else. The gym door creaked open, and Malik stepped through, followed by Sean and Andre, their sneakers squeaking as they crossed the threshold. They weren't the same cocky kids who'd taunted him that first night, daring him to take a shot as a joke. Now, they looked at him differently. A Coach M, they called him, their eyes bright with a mix of respect and expectation. Tonight, though, their faces were tense, their usual chatter subdued. "Yo, Marcus," Malik said, tossing his backpack onto the bleachers. "You hear about the exhibition game? Coach Harris set it up as against West Side Community. It's in 2 weeks, and they're no joke. They've got this point guard, Jalen, who's got NBA scouts sniffing around." Marcus nodded, setting the ball down and leaning against the wall. He'd heard about the game. Westside was a rival program, better funded, with a reputation for churning out players who went on to bigger things. The community center's team, scrappy and underfunded, was the underdog, and everyone knew it. "Heard they're tough," Marcus said, keeping his tone even. "You guys ready?" Sean snorted, kicking at the floor. "Man, we're gonna get smoked if we don't tighten up. Our defense is trash, and half the team can't hit a free throw under pressure." He glanced at Marcus, a flicker of help in his eyes. "You gotta help us, Coach M. You've been making us better." Marcus felt a pang in his chest. Coach M. The name still caught him off guard, like a shirt that didn't quite fit. He'd been working with the kids almost every night since that first free throw, teaching them drills, breaking down plays, showing them how to move as a team. He'd seen Malik's shots get smoother, DeAndre's confidence grow, Sean's hustle sharpen. But coaching a real game, even an exhibition, that was a different beast. He thought of Lena, his 16-year-old daughter, waiting at home with her textbooks and her quiet faith in him. He thought of the hospital bills stacked on the kitchen counter, the second job he was barely holding on to. Could he really take on more? "I'm no coach," Marcus said, picking up the ball again. "Just helping out." Malik shook his head, stepping closer. "Nah, man. You're more than that. You see stuff we don't. Like how you knew my elbow was too low on my jumper, or how you got DeAndre to stop overthinking his layups. We need you out there, Marcus." "For real?" DeAndre nodded, his usually quiet voice steady. "Coach Harris likes you. He keeps asking when you're gonna say yes to the job." Marcus looked at the three of them, their faces earnest, their trust almost tangible. He remembered the night he'd silenced the gym with that perfect shot, the way it had felt to prove them wrong, not just the kids, but himself. Maybe this was another shot, one he couldn't afford to miss. "All right," he said finally, tossing the ball to Malik. "Let's work. Defense first. Westside's gonna come at you faster. Let's make sure you're faster." The next 2 weeks were a blur of late nights and early mornings. Marcus juggled his janitorial shifts with coaching sessions, sneaking in hours of sleep between scrubbing floors and diagramming plays in his notebook. The team started showing up earlier, their energy infectious. They ran drills until their legs shook, practiced free throws until their arms ached, listened as Marcus broke down game tape he'd borrowed from Harris. He taught them to read picks, to anticipate cuts, to trust each other on the court. He wasn't just teaching basketball, he was teaching them to believe they could win, even when the odds said they couldn't. Lena noticed the change in him. She'd sit at the kitchen table, her math homework spread out, watching him sketch plays on scrap paper. "You're different, Dad," she said one night, her voice soft. Like you're a broken bar happy again. Marcus didn't know how to respond, so he just hugged her, holding on a little longer than usual. She was his reason for everything, and if coaching could give them a better life, he'd fight for it. The night of the exhibition game arrived, the gym packed with more people than Marcus had ever seen there. The bleachers were filled with students, parents, even a few local reporters sniffing out a story. Westside's team strutted in, their warm-up gear crisp, their confidence almost suffocating. Jalen, their star point guard, moved like he owned the court, his dribbles sharp and showy, his eyes scanning for weaknesses. Marcus stood on the sidelines, his janitor's uniform swapped for a borrowed polo with the team's logo. His heart pounding harder than it had in years. Coach Harris clapped him on the shoulder. "You're with me tonight," he said. "Assistant coach, official or not. Keep these kids focused." Marcus nodded, his throat tight. He wasn't sure he belonged here, but the team's eyes were on him, waiting for his signal. The game started rough. Westside came out swinging, their offense crisp, their defense relentless. Jalen weaved through the court like a ghost, sinking threes and dishing assists that left Marcus's team scrambling. By the end of the first quarter, they were down by 12, the crowd's cheers for Westside drowning out the scattered support for the home team. Marcus saw the doubt creeping into his players' face. He saw Malik's shoulders slumping, Sean's frustration boiling over in a missed layup. At the huddle, Marcus knelt in front of them, his voice low but firm. "They're good, but they're not unbeatable. You're letting Jalen get in your heads. Stay on him, Malika, crowd his space. Make him work for every shot. Sean, DeAndre, you're faster than their bigs. Run them tired. Trust the plan, trust each other. He locked eyes with each of them, seeing the spark reignite. You're not here to lose. You're here to show them who you are. The second quarter was different. Malik stuck to Jalen like glue, forcing turnovers. DeAndre found his rhythm, hitting mid-range jumpers that kept the score close. Sean's hustle paid off, stealing passes and diving for loose balls. By halftime, they'd cut the lead to 5, and the crowd was starting to believe. Marcus felt it too, a surge of pride, not just for the team but for himself. He was doing this, really doing it. The second half was a battle. Westside adjusted, their coach barking orders, but Marcus's team held their ground. Malik sank a clutch 3, his form perfect, the ball spinning just like Marcus had taught him. DeAndre blocked a shot at the rim, sending the crowd into a frenzy. With 2 minutes left, the score was tied, and the gym was electric, every shout and sneaker squeak amplified. Then it happened. Jalen drove to the basket, faking out Malik and drawing a foul. 2 free throws, a chance to take the lead with 30 seconds on the clock. The gym went quiet, the tension thick as Jalen stepped to the line. Marcus watched, his heart in his throat, knowing how much rode on this moment. Jalen's first shot trimmed out, the crowd gasping. His second grazed the backboard and missed entirely. Marcus's team grabbed the rebound, and Harris called a timeout. The huddle was chaos, the players breathless, their eyes wide with the weight of the moment. Harris looked at Marcus. Your call, Coach M. What's the play? Marcus didn't hesitate. He'd been sketching this play in his notebook for days. A simple but effective move to exploit Westside's aggressive defense. Malik, you inbound to Sean. DeAndre, set a screen at the top of the key. Sean, drive hard, then kick it out to Malik if they collapse. Malik, you're ready to shoot. No hesitation. He paused, meeting their eyes. This is your shot. Take it. The clock ticked down. Malik passed to Sean, who drove toward the basket, drawing 2 defenders. He kicked the ball out to Malik, who was open just beyond the arc. The gym seemed to freeze as Malik caught the ball, squared his shoulders, and let it fly, his form a mirror of the lessons Marcus had drilled into him. The ball arced high, spinning cleanly, and dropped through the net with a swish that silenced the entire gym for a heartbeat before the crowd erupted. The final buzzer sounded, the score 78-76. They'd won. Malik was mobbed by his teammates, the crowd chanting his name, but he broke free and ran to Marcus, throwing his arms around him. That was you, Coach M. He shouted over the noise. You made that happen. Marcus hugged him back, his chest tight with something he hadn't felt in years: pride, purpose, possibility. The gym was alive, the noise deafening, but to Marcus, it was quiet, like the moment after his free throw that first night. He'd silenced the club again, not with a shot but with a team he'd helped build, with a belief he'd helped them find. After the game, Harris pulled him aside. You're in, Marcus. Assistant coach, official. I'm not taking no for an answer. Marcus looked at the court, at the kids celebrating, at Lena in the stands, her smile brighter than the lights. He thought of the years he'd spent cleaning this floor, the dreams he'd buried, the life he was still fighting for. All right, he said, his voice steady. I'm in.